Let's see. There was something I wanted to watch. So, saw this video. Have not watched it just yet, but I thought it was an interesting topic because it's called the longevity of Playboi Carti's Opium label. And I think that a lot of people online that are outside of this Opium fan base, people who don't necessarily like or just don't even know Ken Carson or Destroy Lonely, they think that they're Playboi Carti clones. Now, I personally don't think that they sound like Cardi at all. I mean, they use similar beats. Ken Carson uses way more auto-tune though. Destroy Lonely got his own flow, right? But they all have kind of that same aesthetic. So if you want to call them like clones, like in actual physicality, I get it. We'll listen to Ken's new song, don't worry, I got you. But I want to hear what this dude's got to say.
With the conclusion of the X-Men tour, the drop of both these projects, we've seen how these rock star rage influenced.
This shit is quiet. Let me put on headphones. You gotta speak up. Say it with your chest, bruh. Listen, turn it up.
Artists have came up under the influence of Playboi Carti, but how is it possible that they've managed a nationwide tour on their own? Yeah, it seems like both their faces have been everywhere recently, but had these guys not been on tour this whole time, for Ken, his project wouldn't have been performing nearly as well, and he needed some bangers for this tour.
But isn't that what J. Cole said? Like, if you want to make it in this industry, you gotta keep touring. He said that to Lil Pump.
He's been performing the same tracks for over a year now. And this persona he's building, this rage culture character, we know that there's an influence from Cardi, but I think Ken is following his blueprint a little too closely and a little too quickly. And I think too early on in his career, his sound has become more about the hits and less about the music.
More about the hits, less about the music. Like he's trying to only do the rage music as opposed to making like necessarily good music. Okay.
This is why Cardi is so successful. He spent years developing his sound, developing his fan base, and this character that comes out when he performs, that's something that's been carefully crafted throughout these years. His shows have now become some of the most highly anticipated performances. Playboi Carti, he has that wow factor. He has that thing that continuously brings people in. So for Ken to skip these years of development, I don't think that's a good look for him if we're talking longevity of his career. And if he were to drop another project like this, that wow factor.
I think that before he gets into it, and maybe he'll change my mind, but I feel like doing all this performing and whatnot, yes, it's expedited Ken Carson's growth. However, I think that's a good thing because ultimately your product as an artist now is not necessarily the music, it is the shows, because that's where you sell tickets, where you get physical money, or not physical, digitized, but like you get actual ticket, you know, 20 bucks, 30 bucks per person. That's a true fan right there. Whereas streaming, as we've talked about in other videos and streams, it's like 80% manipulated by the playlist. So that's your marketing mechanism to acquire new fans. And plus, as we all know, you don't really get that much money per stream. I mean, if you get a lot of streams, obviously you can make bank, but the real money comes from the touring. So I think it's actually a good thing that Ken Carson, and that's why he's one of the top underground artists, is because he has this like true fan. I don't even know if it's true fan though, but like people who are actually willing to see him because he has a brand rather than just being the music. But continuing.
Is not going to be there anymore. And don't get me wrong, there's definitely some hits on this album, but it's not anything that we haven't seen from him before. Yeah, from the looks of it.
Facts. X was just not good. Project X, fire! But X was just a like vomited up, like you chewed up Project X and just vomited it back up.
Crowds are going crazy, but this is the same Ken Carson that back in 2021, Lyrical Lemonade Summer Smash, he had fans skipping the Juice WRLD tribute in Chicago to go to the Lenny's tent. And so he's drawing in all these decent sized crowds because his sound was something somewhat new. Or they had just tapped in with his new album at the time and they had seen that he actually had something special going on. And for him, just having dropped Project X, this performance definitely made for a pretty memorable experience. And it was only a couple months later that he was performing at Smokers Club in San Bernardino, the crowd that was there was massive. And so to watch the growth of this character in such a short time span, it was pretty incredible to see how many people were pulling up to see Ken Carson. And not long after that, he returns to Summer Smash for the second time.
Okay, before he gets more into it, I think with X performing how it did, I actually don't know the numbers, but I assume that it was not as it didn't do as well as they projected because of the perception of it as opposed to Project X. But I think that Ken probably saw that, and he's back in the lab working on his sound, trying to make something new. I would hope so. So I think, we're gonna listen to "Come Outside," which is this like new leak. People are saying it's a can diss. I don't know. I listened to some of the lyrics. I was like, it's not a diss, maybe a response at the very beginning, but just like one bar. But yeah, I think Ken just needs to change it up, and then he'll be good. People are like starting to question him just because of one quote bad album, you know?
And after seeing the crowds that he was drawing in, whose idea was it to put him back in the Lenny's tent? So Ken Carson was the front runner of this new label. He was leading this newer rage-influenced wave that had been going on. But we can't discuss the success of Cardi's label without talking about the character that had been slowly growing and carefully crafting his project before his first debut in the spotlight.
Destroy Lonely?
Destroy Lonely has become much less unfamiliar with the drop of his project, No Stylist, whereas before this he's been somewhat of a mysterious character following in the footsteps of his label executive Playboi Carti. But now, from what we've seen from the success of this album, the production quality, the flows and storytelling capabilities that this kid possesses, it seems as if he's the final puzzle piece to the label that is Opium. And it's being revealed to us that the plan...
I don't know about final puzzle piece, but these are the first two for sure, and then potentially Glock, but we'll see about that.
All along was to get Destroy Lonely into the spotlight. So before the drop of No Stylist, the general audience didn't quite know who this guy was. You might have heard some talk about him,
but I do agree that Destroy is like the top of the... I mean, we already saw his monthly listeners are higher than Ken, and just his development of his sound is much more widely appealing. Like, it's like an actual... You know, you could hear it on Rap Caviar, maybe not No Stylist because that's like a rage beat, but there are some other songs on No Stylist where it just sounds like it could be on the radio, you know, whereas Ken is like, no, that's in this specific lane, specific niche of rage music. Not saying that's bad, but like to the casual listener, they're like, turn that shit off. You know?
And if you were looking at just streaming services, it's hard to get an understanding as to who this guy is because he hasn't dropped a project in over 2 years. And as far as social media presence and promotion for this album,
he looks like Cardi.
So something that you might have seen was Ken Carson declining the XXL freshman list.
Hey, that's my thumbnail. Let's go.
And chosen as one of those 10 artists to represent the class this year. I know the general thought was, why is Ken Carson giving up his spot for someone who hasn't had a presence in hip hop? And
so, Ara BB says Uzi should make a label. So, I mean, let me find it. I think Uzi Og posted it on Twitter, maybe Instagram, but I haven't been on Instagram for a little bit because I got hacked or some shit. But Uzi did allegedly have a label or did have an artist, Desto. I don't know why he picked Desto to be his first artist, but right here. Let's see. Became my best friend. It was more important than oxygen to me. We would fight so much because we both wasn't into trusting people, but for some reason, after every argument, we said, I love you, blah, blah, blah. But apparently Desto was Uzi's artist. Maybe not like officially, like, you know, not under papers. Maybe he's still building Desto. I don't think she was that big, but he gave her a feature. So I don't know. I think Uzi should still sign some more artists, but I don't know if his co-sign means as much because he's given out so many features in the past few years, you know?
Over 2 years. This guy is just coming up in the game right now. I know the main question is, who is this guy anyways? But now, with the drop of No Stylist, it's become clear as to why Destroy Lonely was deserving of one of those 10 spots on the XXL freshman list this year. And after 2 years of anticipation for this project, No Stylist finally drops. Both these projects have been out for some time now. This video is taking me a little bit longer than expected, but if you've liked it so far, you should like and subscribe because I'll
give you a like, bro.
Just like this, and I wouldn't want you to miss out on it. So back to the video. Very quickly, I need to go over how these albums actually came out and why that's important for us to understand, because it all comes back to their ties with Opium. So first, we have Destroy Lonely announcing his No Stylist project in March of 2020, which was 2 years prior to the actual drop. And for Ken Carson, in a since deleted tweet, he had announced his project for the first time in October of 2021, and that was only half a year before the actual drop. Now Lonely, he had taken some interviews within this time period.
It's called No Stylist.
No Stylist.
Yeah.
Project No Stylist. I'm sure that.
Bitch, I wake up. No Stylist.
Hell yeah. The fuck?
But Ken, he hadn't done anything like this. The only promotional content he had was the shows that he was doing and the random drop of that Lost Files project leak or whatever.
Low-key, I feel like Ken did his thing in the promoting, bro. I think that Destroy Lonely, and this isn't a bad thing, but the reason No Stylist did so well is because Ken like laid out the groundwork. So Destroy Lonely didn't need to do anything because he was like his twin, you know? So Ken kind of like, he's the front runner. Destroy Lonely is running right now because, no, what is it? How does the saying go? Like, Ken Carson walked so Destroy Lonely could run. Literally. Again, not saying anything bad against about any of them, but that's the way it is.
That was. Fans thought this was the album, but he confirmed that it wasn't and that something else was coming. In this same time period, Destroy Lonely gets on Instagram Live to tell us that the album's finished and that he had just signed to Opium.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm trying to hear about the album necessarily, but I just want to hear his thoughts about the longevity.
He'd have a much better outcome and a much longer duration of time listened. Go is a great example of this. He kept it short, the vocals are sturdier, and it made for a pretty fire song. Plus, this was the chosen song to receive a music video upon the release of this project, and it's his intro to his tour, meaning he comes out to this song. This is the style I believe Ken Carson should be going for.
All right, so he's gonna go into it. Chat, let's just have our own discussion. I think that Ken and Lone are chilling. The Opium label leads the underground, essentially. Yeet's out of the picture now because he's mainstream. Ken and, I mean, all of them are basically not even underground anymore. Destroy Lonely got that TikTok song, No Stylist, but it's a remix. They lead the underground. There's longevity in just the branding. The music is temporary. Okay? Now, there is timeless music, of course, but with the underground and upcoming music, it's always hard to tell. You can't really bet on that. You can't really predict if something's going to be timeless until 2 years from the point it's released. You just don't know what the trends of music will be, but branding is always there, and that's what Cardi has on his side. So every time he gives a cosign, that's why his cosign is so valuable, because it actually like gets people to stick on it. They're like, oh, they might not even make the music, but they will fuck with the person just because it's like, oh, it's Cardi. I love Cardi. Let me suck his wiener. Longevity, we'll see, but I think as long as Cardi's in the picture, Ken and Destroy Lonely will do well, or any artist that he signs.